Let's get the rest of our panel members up here. From the British High Commission, I'd like to invite the Deputy British High Commissioner, Richard Crowder, I believe is with us. Richard, please, wonderful, thank you so much. We're delighted that you're here, so thank you so much. The Country Director for Pakistan from the World Bank also joins us on this panel, Illango Patchamuthu. Illango is, I saw him earlier, great, he's here. We're delighted to be joined on this panel, and again, this is about job creation in Pakistan by the Managing Director of Siemens in Pakistan. Please give a warm welcome to Helmut von Struve. From the Pakistan Stock Exchange, we're absolutely delighted the Managing Director is joining us, Richard Morin. And also a trustee of the Eisenhower Fellowship in the USA, Dr. Shahid Mahmud joins us. So this is our great panel here. And as you can see, tremendous diversity in this panel here that's going to give us from various areas looking at what's going on here. Our moderator for this panel, a warm welcome to the CEO for Pakistan and Senior Vice President of Mitsubishi Corporation, Kimihide Ando. Thank you so much, and you have just about an hour. I'll put it in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you very much for attending this wonderful panel discussion, simply because we have wonderful panelists. And theme of this panel discussion is job creation. And last year, we had more or less the similar panel discussion. And Mr. Illango was part of the panelists, and we did the Blending Pakistan. And this year around, I asked and consulted Illango-san what would be the next subject. And he suggested me the job creation in Pakistan. And yes, I thought it was good, fantastic. Job creation. The words reminds me of Davos in 2018, yes, 2018, January. Then Prime Minister Shahid Abbasi attended Davos, and among many things he did, he attended panel discussions on CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. I mean, that it's not only the CPEC, this BRI, we call it, Belt Road Initiative. And Shahid Abbasi was one of the panelists. There are, the delegates from Singapore, Russia, and those. And after the panel discussion, the facilitator asked one question. Describe BRI, Belt Road Initiative, in one word. And all the other panelists described in 10 sentences. But Shahid Abbasi said only one thing, job creations. So previous government, according to previous government, CPEC is all about job creations. Since I mentioned Shahid Abbasi, I might have to give you a little bit about him. What he did is during his tenure of the Minister of Petroleum and Natural Resources, he put up the 2 terminals. And being in LNG industries, energy industries, and Mitsubishi trying to put up the 3rd LNG terminal, mass media seems to be focusing on one thing and totally negating another thing. Because you are not specialized in the LNG. So I thought that this is a good occasion that I tell you. 2 terminals importing LNG. Do you know the capacity of the LNG? You don't have to know it. But you must be knowing that the biggest gas field in Pakistan, this is, we call it Mari gas field. Do you know the capacity of the Mari gas field? You don't know. You don't have to know. All I have to tell you is that with the 2 existing LNG terminal capacity-wise, we are importing LNG with equivalent to the 2 times, double of marine gas. And what I'm saying is that this 2 terminal is capable of supplying 35% of the total requirement of Pakistan requires. So just imagine, that we facing the short energy supply, gas supply in this winter. Just imagine if there were no terminals at all. So, food for thought. Anyway, we go back to this job creations. And first, I would like to ask Margaret-san about, are there any activities that Australia contributing or thinking about contributing for job creation in Pakistan?
Well, thanks very much indeed, Kimihide, and you've made a very interesting introduction to the theme, very much a multifaceted theme of job creation. And you've decided to hone in on what potential contribution Australia may be making to Pakistan's needs and efforts along these lines. I would perhaps just start by reiterating what I'm sure others have said in this conference, and that is the demographics of Pakistan before one even starts. The urgent need to educate this population, the urgent need to skill up the workforce, and then, of course, moving out in those concentric circles, the need to ensure that there is a business-friendly environment in Pakistan. Just listening to a couple of the earlier presentations, I was struck by that saying, "It's the economy, stupid," which has been so often used and referred to over a number of years now. But of course, the economy in terms of creating jobs definitely also needs to be an inclusive economy. So an inclusive economy, a sustainable economy, an economy where access to finance is also inclusive. So you wind the wheel back to startups, to education, to the technical and vocational education and training. These needs of the Pakistan economy, the Pakistan workforce. Sitting here on a slightly gender-balanced panel, I would also highlight the need to ensure that we have our gender glasses on too, and that whenever we're speaking about skilling up and education and financial inclusiveness, that we are bearing in mind the need to ensure that we are ensuring the opportunities for 50% of the population to contribute to economic growth, 50% of the population to have access to jobs. In the Australian context too, I think, and I'm conscious of other countries who equally place a very big focus on the small and medium-size slice of the economy in terms of a driver of job creation. And here in Pakistan, I've attended, as part of my work here and part of the Australian support for the building up of Pakistan's skilled workforce, educated workforce. Quite apart from attending many sessions, sending off successful scholarship awardees under the Australia Awards scholarships, which have been going all the way back to the 1950s. We have literally thousands and thousands of Pakistani alumni who have studied in Australia on scholarship. Also, of course, we are a very popular destination for scholars who are deciding to study in Australia on a self-funded basis. But in this context, I've also attended many so-called business incubator centres and engaged in some mentoring and discussion with young people who have aspiration to start a business. And I think that this is a very, very important element of effort within Pakistan as well, to give young people the confidence and indeed that financial inclusiveness off the back of a decent education so that they are able then to head off into starting off a business of their own. Because it won't always be employment. Job creation also means creation as well by individuals. So I think that small and medium-sized enterprise sector is hugely important. I just wanted to use the example of Australia also in terms of the services sector. I'm very conscious here that in Pakistan there's a great need to improve the level of exports. That's often a discussion point. And the need to rebuild or to actually build up the manufacturing sector. But we also need to bear in mind the services sector, and we need to bear in mind the future of work, so that we are equipping this nation to have jobs in the yet to be thought of areas of economic engagement, economic development. And so on that level, I think that it's, again, incredibly important. It comes back to the skilling up of the workforce. And if one thinks about the services sector, my own nation is a very aggressive exporter of tourism. And Pakistan aspires to be, and should. It's got absolutely remarkable natural beauty. It's got remarkable cultural heritage as a country of this region of remarkable historic cultures, and those cultural legacy traces are very, very exciting to observe, very exciting for heritage-related tourists to come and see. So tourism, you need an entire infrastructure, of course. You need a skilled-up workforce. You need, of course, accommodation and those other forms of infrastructure to welcome tourists. You also, of course, just as you need for foreign investment and for business visitors, for all visitors, they need to feel confident about the security of the nation. So here too, I think that skilling up the workforce, making sure that Pakistan's door is open for business, open for tourists, and that the international traveller and business person is fired up with the fascination of visiting Pakistan, fired up also that Pakistan is emerging as a competitive place to invest. All of these working together, these are all levers towards developing Pakistan's job creation. So I think that's been a rather long answer to your question, Kimihide. But Australia is, as I said before, in terms of our aid program, but also in terms of our advocacy efforts in Pakistan, my own efforts to encourage Australian business to come and see for themselves opportunities here in Pakistan. All of these are various forms of contributing to Pakistan's successful, inclusive job creation efforts. So I'll leave it at there. Thanks.
Thank you. I mean that, as always, you gave a lot of insights and keywords like gender balance, finance inclusiveness, vocational training, and business incubations, SMEs, export, and also tourism, future of works, and foreign investors. And thank you very much always. I mean that I've been noticing your activities here, and you're true advocates of Pakistan's potential to Australia's. Thank you very much. And so, Richard Craddoson, I mean that similar questions, I mean that from the UK angle, British angles.
Well, Ando, thank you very much. And can I just say first, what a fantastic event, and fantastic to be here. I've lived in Pakistan for more than a couple of years now, and in my role I've seen many different sides of the country, but it's really at events like this that I think you can feel and see in front of you the huge potential that Pakistan has in the world. So, so very exciting. In terms of talking about the UK and Pakistan, it's sort of always difficult to know where one sort of stops and the other begins, really, because it's such a special and unique kind of relationship between our countries. Obviously, 1.5 million people in the UK of Pakistani origin, 2% of the population, and now occupying some of the sort of leading roles in public life. So a very special kind of relationship, and I meet so many people in Pakistan who have different kinds of connection with the UK, whether it's through family or business or education or travel and the rest of it. But the UK's commitment to Pakistan and through that the economy and job creation works on many levels. In terms of our trading relationship, we are the second largest export market for Pakistan overseas at the moment, largest export market, of course, within Europe, and we're the second largest source of FDI coming into Pakistan. Obviously, leading companies here, Shell, Unilever, others. The return of British Airways in June of this year will be a flagship moment for British business in Pakistan. Our investment through our development program here with DFID, it's the largest bilateral aid program that we operate around the world. It adds up to as much as the other countries in Europe together operating in Pakistan. Some of the biggest programs are focused on health and primary education, but also very important contributions in terms of the business environment, job creation, microfinance, and so on. And the activity of the British Council here, which is, again, a huge operation. I think now more than 2 million qualifications, O and A levels, professional qualifications and so on, administered by the British Council in this country. And I always feel that speaks to the sort of the level of aspiration and commitment within the people of Pakistan towards education and betterment and creating a different kind of future. So I think the UK's position as an investor and supporter of human capital in Pakistan, which is an essential precondition of creating jobs and the right kind of jobs too, as Margaret was describing, I think that's pretty clear. But I would just say I think there are choices that we need to be conscious of and reflect on. Choices for foreign countries here, whether it's as investors or donors, but also choices for Pakistan and the kind of country that Pakistan wants to be in the future. If you look back at the now sort of 70 plus years since independence, there have been good times and less good times, and the economic growth rate has fluctuated over that. Sometimes it's been up sort of 5-6%, sometimes it's been more like 2 or 3%. If you think about the kind of, the demographic challenges going into the future, the sort of rate of growth that Pakistan's going to need to be hitting in order to be creating new jobs for all those young people coming into the workforce and raising GDP per capita, then you're going to have to be at the upper level of that sort of spectrum and even beyond it. And that's going to bring choices for Pakistan about the kind of economic model, choices about the business environment. There's been some progress on the investment climate, but that will need to go further. Choices about public spending and taxation and levels of public investment. Choices about Pakistan's trading relationships with its neighbours in the region and elsewhere. And choices about the kind of labour market and labour practices, including in some of the rural areas where there are still practices like bonded labour, which frankly feel anachronistic in the 21st century. And all of those choices are going to carry consequences. You can't achieve growth in population and economy without shifting society, power relationships between different groups in society and so on. So Pakistan needs to be ready in making those kind of choices, to be ready for a national consensus. Such, may I say, that I think has been achieved in terms of tackling fundamentalism and terrorism inside the country in recent years. But that will be necessary in terms of economic growth too. And if Pakistan makes those kind of choices, then I think countries like the UK and others will continue to be a partner and continue to be able to support that process. But they are choices, as I say, that the rest of the world needs to make too about the way that we work with the Pakistan of the future. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will change the direction. I will go to Mr. Shahid Mahmud-san. Simply because I'm very much curious to hear from you. One question. Is Juan Lee here, or he went out for the tea? I don't know. The last presenter, Juan Lee, made fabulous presentations on the Bitcoin and this and that. But some of them I'm very much familiar, but I'm from the dinosaur age. And frankly, Bitcoin, I'm not so much familiar. And people like me who are totally ignorant on ICT, AI, or IoT, whatever, we tend to think that, okay, if the AI is going to taking over most of our job, then that, what is it? I mean, that the job creations, I mean, that AI, IoT, doing away with our current job, so it's not going to give the job creation. Maybe that's wrong, but the perception, which maybe, I would say, 70% of the population, 60% of the global population seems to have it. Would you be able to enlighten us that actually this thing is good for the job creations or in the different dimensions?
Thank you very much. It is indeed a pleasure to be here, and I must compliment Nutshell and Martin Dow that they gather such an eminent August House, and especially leadership from all across Pakistan, because it's always a pleasure to share with our own Pakistanis, and being the only Pakistani on this panel, I would like to put some paradigms right. So when it comes to AI and the future, I will relate a story, but before I say that, if you look at the global developing companies, there are no more oil companies that are leading the world, they are all data companies. So the data is the future oil, and AI is the electricity for that. And what we are fortunate as Pakistanis is we have 60% of our population under 30, and we will be and are at the 6th and the 5th. So individuals produce data, and that is what we understand we need to equip ourselves in different fields to jumpstart the technology the way it is moving. Where technology is moving is we're doubling everything. So bandwidth doubles every 12 months, storage doubles every 12 months, microprocessors are doubling every 12 months. So for anyone to say that they have it in their grip is not a fair statement, because everybody's learning. And I think with what gives me as a Pakistani the hope that we are on the right track is, for the first time we have a government that is talking about being an open government. Open government means open data, open information, and open dialogue. Once these three things start happening, there will be enough data for the bright minds of Pakistan, the young Pakistanis, who are really jumping at acquiring the knowledge base to be able to do that cutting edge globally. Now, when I say that, I'd like to narrate a very small episode that happened with me. So I was asked to speak at a welfare school in the suburbs of Lahore. The principal said, Dr. Shahid Mahmud is going to talk to you about AI and robotics and this and that. And these were 8th, 9th graders in a welfare school outside Lahore. And I was like, what do you want me to talk to them? And do they really get it? Because my Urdu is not the most brilliant. She said, no, just talk to them and they'll get it. I said, fine. So I took 30 minutes. And when I finished, I asked the kids, what do you think? And they said, one of the kids came up and said, oh, well, we're going to use robotics and AI for replacing people in the factories as workers. And I said, then what will happen about your job? And immediately another kid raises his hand. And this kid, I said, sure. He says, no, I've got it right. We will use robotics and AI where human lives are endangered. This is the spirit of the young Pakistanis at the grassroots level. They know what they want, they know where we want to go, and they will do it. And we are very fortunate. And we are very fortunate that we have a great country that is at the cusp of getting a fair government, but also at the cusp of cutting-edge technology, because we have not explored. If we talk about AI and Bitcoins and e-commerce and all the platforms, it has to run through logistics. One Belt, One Road is all about how do you get Chinese products across the world. It is nothing more than that. When you want to run logistics, you need to understand that we have great potential for logistics in Pakistan. If you want to develop tourism, 131 million Chinese alone go for tourism every year. We only get 500,000 tourists, so great potential. We have the best places to go. So there is a lot of places we have not explored. For instance, our exclusive economic zone, 290,000 square kilometers of Pakistan, which is half the size of the land Pakistan, under the sea, not explored. So jobs are there. We just need to reskill our youth. And alhamdulillah, I think we will do better than most think we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shahid Mahmud. I mean, that hearing what you said, I mean, that it's eye-opening for me, because that whatever being e-trading, whatever being e-traded needs to be delivered. So I mean that the logistics part is there, and yes, I can understand. Richard Morin-san, I have your, yes, questions. How would you describe the role of capital markets? Because you are head of the Pakistan Stock Exchange, the role of capital markets in job creations. And are there any policy implications for the government of Pakistan? If you could kindly enlighten us.
Ando-san,
yeah.
You're always very kind to me with your questions. Capital markets play a vital role in any economy, and Pakistan is no exception. We play a central role in the economy and in job creation. Our essential mission is that of capital formation, and capital is the lifeblood of companies that create jobs in Pakistan. So anyone interested in job creation must be interested in the development of capital markets, and in particular in the development of public capital markets. The stock exchange is a public capital market where the entire investing public in Pakistan is invited to buy the shares of listed companies. Now there's and in particular, public capital market and publicly listed companies bring different outcomes in terms of job creation and the creation of quality jobs. Public companies must maintain a balance between the interest of the various stakeholders they have. Shareholders, obviously, employees, clients, and society as a whole. So for various reasons, including the fact that they are publicly visible, they adhere to codes of corporate governance, they maintain a balance between these stakeholders, which is not always the case with private companies. We've seen private companies behave differently towards some of their stakeholders, including employees. So to me, that raises a question, because there has been a trend. It's a worldwide trend, and Pakistan has not escaped it. A worldwide trend towards private capital financing our companies, as opposed to public capital. I'll just give some numbers here. And the US numbers are really eloquent. In 1996, there were 8,000 companies listed on US exchanges. Today, there's 4,300, almost half as few as there were 20 years ago. And the number of IPOs in a year. In 96, there were approximately 800 IPOs in initial public offerings, new companies listed on exchanges in the US. In 2016, merely 100 listed, new listed companies on US exchanges. And if I look at Pakistan, the trend is pretty much the same. In fact, we've probably done slightly better than US markets. So there are reasons why public markets have, in relative terms, lost importance in bringing capital to our companies. And again, these companies creating jobs in the economy. There are structural issues. Some of these issues have to do with regulation. I think we've come to realize that all the additional regulatory requirements imposed on public companies have come to change the balance between the advantages of being listed and the burden. And many companies have come to conclude that the regulatory burden on listed companies is so high that they prefer to go to the private markets to get financing. There are also Pakistan-specific structural issues, and the elephant in the room in Pakistan, obviously, is that an estimated 70% of Pakistan's economy is undocumented. And I say estimated because, by nature, it's undocumented. We don't know how large it is. And an undocumented economy, first of all, doesn't have access to public capital markets. These undocumented companies cannot come to the stock exchange to get fresh financing. But they also do not create the type of quality jobs that you find on the documented economy. Job security is not the same in the undocumented economy. There's basically no social safety net available, no companies finance access to healthcare. So these are all issues that are relevant. And again, as we succeed in developing Pakistan's capital market, we will help solve some of these issues. And the arrival of this new government in Pakistan is very encouraging. I must say we have very constructive discussions with the finance minister. He understands, he gets it. He understands the importance of developing Pakistan's capital market and its impact on Pakistan's economic success and job creation in Pakistan. So I'm very optimistic. We have a lot of work before us, big challenges, but I think we have the right partners in the government of Pakistan to get the job done.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard Morinson. And thank you for closing your speech by showing your optimism. And that's very important. Undocumented economy needs to be documented. That is the kind of the message we foreigners keep on telling to Pakistan. And there is a basis for it. One example is that very recently I had a dinner with the CEO of one of the international tobacco manufacturers. There are only Pakistan Tobaccos and Philip Morris, so I'm not telling which one. But he was telling me that in Pakistan, illicit tobacco, illicit cigarette, fake cigarette, market capture, market share of those fake cigarette, illicit cigarette, is about 35%. And those 35% are undocumented economies, and it doesn't come to the banking system. Well, people tend to say that, yeah, it's Pakistan, it's 35%, yeah. But do you know the market share of the illicit cigarette in Bangladesh? 2%. Here, 35. There, 2%. And my friend the CEO is saying that their operation in Bangladesh is making double the profit of in Pakistan. And they are one of the most highly taxpayer in Pakistan. There ought to be something wrong. I mean that, and we are kind of taxing, kept on taxing those taxed. And that will, you see that all of these will send a certain message to the foreign investors. And although we agree that we have a huge potential, but you see, people in the headquarters start second guessing also. We have $100, shall we invest in this country or that country? Pakistan is good. You know well that I'm a total optimist in Pakistan, so I mean that I'm allowed to say this kind of things because I'm leaving, I mean that this much, so that is a kind of the message I can leave, and please bear with me because rest assured, I mean that I'm a total optimist to Pakistan. Anyway, going to then Helmut-san, you probably is, after my departure, the longest surviving foreigner CEO in Pakistan business universe, Helmut. Yeah, I'm talking about Helmut, I'm sorry. So what are your organization, Siemens Pakistan, is contributing in job creations, and you are global companies, so for job creations, you must be doing many other things which you are not doing in outside, not in Pakistan, but is there anything in the pipeline?
Thanks a lot, Ando-san. It's really, am I the only then longest-serving CEO, foreign longest-serving CEO when you have departed? I'm not.
I think you will be the one of them. How long have you been here?
3.5 years now.
Okay, you are long.
Good. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to Asan to host this really exciting event here, and it's great if you see all the participants. If you look at, and I put down some numbers, if you look at the numbers, 70% of the youth in Pakistan is actually completing secondary education. And only a really small percentage of them acquire, during this secondary education, employable skills. So, and the majority of the youth that actually then goes to work is absorbed by the informal sector, and then the undocumented sector, informal sector, whereby the majority of the skills are actually taught through the, and now I need to hopefully I pronounce this correctly, Ustad Shahid concept. The master and the student concept, which is then mainly in manufacturing and trade and transportation and textile and so on. With this concept, which is very, very old, the formation of the skill set that is required is actually quite slow. There is no systematic organization, and it's not systematically organized. It's very much also depending on the willingness of the certain ustad to then really translate his knowledge towards the students. And having no real regulatory framework in this method of training, the risk of exploitation, be it child labor, long hours worked, and others, is actually quite high. So this is something, and also then it means that the likeliness that this ustad is giving the child and not the child, but the youth that is being trained, the skill set with advanced trades or more new technologies and higher developed processes is also very low. So what Siemens does, we firmly believe, and it has been mentioned before, in the concept of technical vocational education and training, TVET. If you look at Siemens, we have the global company. Siemens was founded in 1847. We have been in this area for many, many years, and yesterday I realized that when we were at the Prime Minister and he mentioned that he was actually 66 years old, this was exactly the time when, in 1953, when Pakistan was registered as a company here. So we have quite a history, and we have over the years educated more than 5,000 engineers in our apprentice program locally here. We have educated more than close to 2,000 SAP consultants in the time that we have been supporting and bringing SAP into the country. The company itself globally is investing more than 600 million euros only for training. And we are part of a group of companies that is very proud in really being on the forefront of industrialization of Pakistan. We are working very closely with the German government and with German government organizations like GIZ to promote the TVET initiative in Pakistan, the one that has been also now formulated in 2018. That is exactly what should not happen. I think I gave some wrong numbers. So this is something that we are very keen to do. We had last year a very active delegation from Germany. The foreign minister of Germany was here 2 days ago, so he reiterated the topic of education. We have done this in many other countries. Our global head of training was here last year. He is a very keen supporter of the initiatives that we have now kicking off. So we are very much focused on supporting, from a private sector point of view, the institutions to form these vocational training centers. We have been working with Amantech for some time now. in not only sponsoring their trainings, but also equipping them with the necessary tools and softwares to educate them. We have done this in other universities. And this is one of the things that I'm personally, but also my team is very much driving forward, together with the German ambassador, who is also extremely keen in taking this initiative together with other companies, in order to really make sure that the youth that is coming towards the workplace here is educated, but also that the existing workforce is continuously educated for the future in order to remain employable.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And I am kind of eyewitness that the German government very much active, has been very much active in promoting, how do I say, the job creation in Pakistan, putting up a lot of vocational centers and what's not. So it's also, I mean, that being Japanese, I also have to say that not only Mitsubishi Corporation alone, Japanese company residing in Pakistan is doing all the CSR work, and most of them are related to vocational training educations. Japanese government also supporting a few projects, not say few, many projects. Anyway, I will go to Illango-san, country director of World Bank, and so your bank. How do you view Pakistan's and also any program, project that you are supporting them? If you could update.
Thank you very much, Ando-san, and let me congratulate the organizers for the energy that has been generated by this event. Normally when you come to the second day, second half, the hall is often half full, so to see a room full of people clearly shows the energy and enthusiasm for Pakistan's future. Let me start by saying in about 28 years, Pakistan will be celebrating its first century as an independent country. And our analysis indicates that Pakistan can become a $2 trillion economy from where you are today, around $320, $330 billion. For that to happen, job creation will be at the center of that prosperous journey for Pakistan. If you look at the historical trends, Pakistan's investment rate, as calculated as investment to GDP, is half of rest of South Asia. And that has been one of the big problems why job creation hasn't happened. So if one analyzes the root cause of why the investment rates are low, beyond the informality that was mentioned by speakers before me, it also goes to the predictability of doing business in this country. A service sector company today in Pakistan will have to follow nearly 1,500 regulations, licenses, fees, and so on and so forth, administered by 40 different entities. I don't think that is what you want to see as a future Pakistan. And I believe what is important is the ease of doing business has to continue to happen much more in a rapid fashion pace than it has happened in the past. Pakistan did see an improvement of 11 places from 147 to 136. But I think Pakistan can be even in the top 75 if it pursues with a single-minded objective to eliminate thousands and thousands of unwanted requirements that currently exist in the rule books of the country. The second is, Pakistan has also become 5 different markets. It doesn't work as a single unified market, and you see this across the whole landscape, and you often hear about it. Time has come for Pakistan also to look at the whole nation within the ambit and conformity to the 18th Constitution. What can be done to promote Pakistan as a single market? So an entrepreneur who starts an operation or runs an operation in Karachi can also operate in Peshawar without additional registration, additional licenses. So to me, to get to that $2 trillion dream, what is important is to be able to create a regulatory environment that is predictable, where the private sector feels extraordinarily comfortable to be able to invest and they know the returns are going to be there. And this will, in a way, ensure that jobs are created. Pakistan needs about 1 million jobs or more every year starting now because of your demographic dividend that you see, as the speakers before me said. And this is only going to grow with more people coming out into the labor market. And with technology sweeping the workforce, one also is going to be challenged whether Pakistan is ready for the future of what the global business and private sector landscape is going to look like, where technology, trade, and trade logistics, which I call the 3 Ts of the future growth potential for Pakistan, will all require a lot more, I would say, skills that are currently not found in plenty in Pakistan. So, as Margaret said, you start with schooling. I think you've got to really put great emphasis in primary and secondary education, moving up to vocational and skilling up. I think still there are a lot more opportunities, and it has to be more demand-driven. I know the emphasis more seems to be producing thousands and thousands of people, but I think the emphasis should be about what skills are you imparting and what is the market wanting. If the market wants more carpenters, I think one should be producing that and not lathe operators. The mismatch has to be managed. For example, in the housing sector alone, we have a housing finance project for about $150 million to support housing mortgage. If the housing market expands here, the housing industry begins to build up, 30 to 40 other sectors of the economy benefit, which means thousands of more jobs get created. And finally, I think the higher education, I think Pakistan has made tremendous progress in the last 20 years in setting up universities, but what is needed now is to get to a standard where you have research and academic output that start becoming the world standard, like the ones you see from IBA in Karachi or LUMS in Lahore. So we as an institution are doing a lot in job creation, but we see through the lens of poverty reduction. As global examples and evidence suggests, job creation is the best way to end poverty.
Thank you very much. Illango-san, I'm actually one of my favorite Twitter is you, and I follow your tweet. And those of you who are not following him, I think you should follow. Also Margaret-san and everybody, but Illango-san keep on sending a message to Pakistan that this is happening, that is happening. The few months back, if my memory is correct, you mentioned that malnutrition of the child is kind of the fundamental future obstacle for Pakistani growth. Because you might have a position, job created, but you need to fill in those. And lots of people coming in. So is there any comments on malnutrition in child?
Certainly, Pakistan has had high levels of stunting at 44%. It stood like that for about 45 years. It's now come down to 37% based on the most recent demographic and health survey. And that's good news. That means you've seen a 7% reduction over the last 5 years, which is comparable with what Bangladesh, Nepal, and other countries have done. And as the former World Bank president sort of brought international attention to this issue of stunting, where he said, a stunted brain is not going to be the one that's going to have the best cognitive skills, and you need cognitive skills to be able to participate fully in the future, what I call the fourth industrial revolution or the tech industry. And I think the Honorable Prime Minister, I think soon after he took office, he did show a photograph of a stunted brain versus a regular brain. So therefore, this calls to attention the need to step up on nutrition efforts. And based on the most recent results, these are encouraging. But Pakistan can't continue to be in the 30s and 35s in stunting. It has to work towards bringing it down to as fast as possible to 10%. And it is not only the, so stunting is, everybody thinks it's a lack of food and so on. No, primarily what we are saying is based on the research we've done in Pakistan, it's poor sanitation that's causing much of the problems around stunting today, because it has, there is diarrhea, mothers become anemic, so they don't have enough nutrition to be able to provide to their kids, and this gets very challenging. So therefore, the first 1,000 days of since conception to the second year is the most important year for adequate nutrition, because that's when the brain formation happens. And finally, let me move on to also the nutrition challenge of Pakistan is also one of a population challenge. Today, Pakistan is 207 million, and if you continue at today's fertility rates of 3.5 children per mother, you're looking at 400 million people by the time you turn 100 in 2047. I don't really think that's something the country can carry with this large population. So what is important is, besides working on nutrition interventions, one has to also start looking at family planning and bring it down to 2, 2.5, as the rest of South Asia currently has.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have a limited time, but then that I will go backwards, that from Helmut to the Margaret-san, that if there are anything that you're missing that to say or want to supplement hearing others are saying, if you have anything, you can pass, of course, but Helmut?
I think one of the points that has been reiterated throughout the conference was also what Sadaf mentioned earlier, is the balance for the better. Really the inclusion in the workforce, and also bringing the female contribution and the female participation in the workforce. We are a technology company, and also we are working hard on making sure that we have engineers, and that is one of the really positive areas of Pakistan, because you have more engineering students that are actually female than male. So this is something which we want to support, we are keen to support, and I think this is something that I would like to encourage everybody to really work hard on.
Good, thank you very much. Richard Morin-san?
Well, if you give me the opportunity, I'll come back to this, to what I think is a fundamental question. Again, undocumented economy. Not only are jobs in the undocumented economy, but a large part of the capital pool in Pakistan is undocumented. It lies there. Unfortunately, the only outlet for that capital is the real estate market. So that is leading to massive overinvestment in real estate, which has two immensely negative impacts on Pakistan. First, it prices the average Pakistani out of the real estate market. People can't afford to buy a house in Karachi, in Lahore, and all across Pakistan. So massive overinvestment in real estate, while at the same time, the companies in the documented economy are starved of capital. That capital going to the real estate market is not coming to companies that would use it to create jobs in Pakistan and make Pakistan's economy more competitive on the world stage. So I think this is an issue of fundamental importance. If Pakistan is going to move forward, it needs to address this issue. And again, I'm encouraged because our finance minister gets it, and the whole government of Pakistan is moving in that direction.
Very good, thank you. Shahid-san?
Well, I'd like to add that recently I looked at some numbers, and what I think as Pakistanis we have a great challenge. We're very good at, once we get it, we can get it done. So one thing that I realized, that the number of hours our students are spending in secondary education or in the first 12 years of their education is about 1,000 hours. And when you compare it to our neighbors, the Chinese are spending 2,000 and the Indians are spending 1,400. And that, I think, and thank God I am where I am in age, but the younger generation has to understand that it is not only the AI or the academic or the machine learning that you have to focus on, it is pure hard work. So in simple words, if a Pakistani student goes through school for 12 years, in the same time frame a Chinese has done 24 years. And he has developed in his DNA the quality of working very hard. The day we get that right, we're flying.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Richard Kurl-san? Yeah. Richard-san?
Well, thank you. A very rich discussion. I guess, I mean, I've been particularly struck by the point about the size of the undocumented economy, and, you know, striking sort of compared to the figures about the number of pieces of paper you have to get if you decide to become, you know, a company that's documented. I mean, it sort of comes back to what I was saying about choices, really. And, you know, I was sort of thinking as I heard that. I remember when the British Airways senior team came out to sort of, you know, basically to talk about security arrangements around restarting flights. And they went to the Safer Cities project here in Islamabad, which, you know, I say is really impressive. I mean, a remarkable infrastructure and level of coverage from all those cameras around the city. And it sort of, it goes to the point that this is a country and a society that can make choices about bringing things into a sort of, a more documented and regularized space, certainly in the security dimension, when it wishes to. But that hasn't happened in the same way in the sort of the investment and business sphere. And I think we have to ask ourselves why that is, and what are the choices, conscious or otherwise, which lie behind that.
Thank you very much. Choices. Yeah. You have choices. And Pakistan knows which one is good choices. It's just of choosing it.
Exactly.
I think that's a very nice insight. Margaret-san?
Well, I think I would indeed echo and support all of the points that have been made. As Richard said, I think it's been a very rich discussion, and thank you so much, Ando-san, for bringing us all together. Yes, indeed, choices, and when those are positive choices, once again, it is a land of opportunity. It's a land of great potential. When one does go back to some of those troubling issues of undocumented capital that is swishing around in this economy and indeed globally, these are, of course, are very important points for us collectively when we think collectively about our need for protecting our societies and for security, as well as for growing our economies in order to, of course, to provide a good and safe and happy environment for our citizens. So those choices, I think that kind of becomes the leitmotif for our panel. I go back to Illango's points about nutrition. There are choices there too. There are choices about population growth. There are choices about implementing legislation in terms of marriage age. There are choices even about adopting legislation which is uniform across the country in regard to the age of marriage. Because when you have people who are giving birth to children, women who are giving birth to children, I should say girls giving birth to children from a very early age and then repeated pregnancies, normally the mother is undernourished from the very beginning, and then of course successive pregnancies mean that each child is undernourished as well. So this is not just a family matter, it actually becomes a matter for the nation, because again the demography is dramatic, and far too many of that demography are children who will never reach their full potential because they are stunted. There's the choices. Choices about providing sufficient education so that the young people arrive at the point of being skilled up, ready to take up that technical and vocational education and training, or indeed further academic studies to be able to contribute to your nation's development. Also so that they can compete on an international market. Pakistan remains enormously reliant on remittances. The Pakistani workforce that goes out to seek to send back remittances to their family, again benefiting their individual family, but collectively a hugely important source of hard currency for Pakistan. But competitiveness is a huge issue there in terms of how they compete on the regional market when one thinks dramatically of the Middle Eastern or the Gulf economies, and more broadly. So that comes back to skills. Keeping children in school, equipping them with education, making sure that they are healthy from the get-go in terms of not being stunted, and having those opportunities, making sure that the entire population is able to contribute to the development of the nation. So I think it really does come back to that leitmotif of choices and acting on those choices, ensuring that education is available for all. Of course, this is a massive, massive challenge. We come back to the private sector, the role of the private sector in providing education according to regulatory requirements, of course. But again, coming back to young people emerging ready and capable of contributing to the nation going forward as a secure nation within a secure region. So it's choices. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. So it looks like choices, imaging the unimaginable. We image it and we know the right answer. But I just want to close by saying, throwing with the food for thought. 2 months back, I made a there was a conference in LAMS, and I made the presentations and Q&A sessions. The student said that, what is the advice to Pakistani youngsters? The one thing I said that don't make shortcut. Don't make shortcut. You make choice. You know the right answer, right choice, but people tend not to take that choices. Why? Because it's hard. You take shortcut. And I think that this mindset is everywhere in the world. I don't say that this is specific in Pakistan, but choices, I think, is the key word, if I may, for this panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Kimihide, thank you so much, and to all of our panel, thank you so much. Please stay with us. As far if I can invite you back to the stage. Ali Akai, I believe, is still with us, and Dr. Ibrahim Al-Dosri, the advisor to the Prime Minister in Bahrain. If I can have the three of you up here to give our appreciation to all of our panel, and thank you all so much. It was a very, very stimulating conversation, and again, when we look at the future of job creation in Pakistan, a lot of key issues to look at. It's not just about jobs, so we really have to look deeper on that. Really, really fascinating insight. The only shortcut, of course, you guys can take will be lunch in a few minutes, so, and please, I do want you back here by 1:55, no later. So please, if I could ask, first of all, Her Excellency Margaret Adamson, forgive me, Her Excellency Margaret Adamson, just a token of our appreciation, please. Thank you so much for your tremendous contribution. And please all stay on the stage. We will have a group photo in just a moment. Thank you so much for your contribution. From the British High Commission, the Deputy High Commissioner, Richard Crowder. Thank you again, Richard, again for your contribution. We really appreciate it. Illango Patchamuthu from the World Bank. Illango, thank you so much. Again, this is really job creation here is really a joint effort from all of the key players, a lot of people involved in this. From Siemens, Helmut von Struve, the Managing Director for Siemens here in the region, as he said, still going strong after all these years. So Helmut, again, thank you for your contribution to this panel, and indeed here, of course, in the country, a thriving business in the country. The Pakistan Stock Exchange Managing Director, Richard Morin. Richard, thank you again for your contribution. And Dr. Shahid Mahmud. Dr. Shahid Mahmud from the Eisenhower Fellowship in the USA. Thank you, Dr. Mahmud. And to Kimihide, Ando, for your wonderful moderation. Thank you so much.